Sorry, Jacqueline. We've got to pivot now over to Jagmeet Singh. Let's listen in.
Traditional lands, the traditional unceded lands of the Algonquin Nation. And anytime we acknowledge the Indigenous territories that we speak on, I think it's important for us to also commit collectively to fight for justice for the first people of this land. Un grand merci à tout le monde d'être ici dans cette congrès virtuelle.
For everyone here in this virtual meeting. I would have preferred to be together in person, but I know it's a difficult time. But I want to appreciate all our volunteers, those who work for us, and those who are a big part of our party. Thank you for all of your involvement, your work. Thanks to you, we have succeeded in electing NDP MPs, and we have the opportunity to create advantages for people and benefits. It's thanks to us that we have eliminated poverty for a lot of people.
I know that there's so many moments, special moments that we enjoy in person, in the hallways, and I know we're missing that. And these are difficult times, but I want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you. Because of you, because of everyone that's a part of our movement, all the volunteers, all the activists, because of all of you, we've elected incredible New Democrat MPs, 24 of my incredible teammates, and all of us together in Ottawa have fought to make life better for people. And it is really because of you that we have been able to achieve significant victories for people. So thank you to all of you, all the people that make up our movement. And we know there's so much more that we need to do, but thank you for being a part of this movement. Thank you for being a part of this party. Thank you so much. I know that this pandemic has been tough. It's impacted us massively. We know so many people have been hurt by this pandemic. People have lost their jobs. Small businesses have been forced to shut down, maybe never opening again. And we know that people have lost their lives. This pandemic has hit us all, but it's specifically and disproportionately impacted some people. We know that Indigenous communities that have already struggled with historic and ongoing injustice because of a lack of access to clean drinking water, access to healthcare resources, overcrowded homes, have felt the impact of this pandemic even more so. We know women who have already borne so much of the brunt of this pandemic, being stretched to the max, having to deal with childcare and care for their aging and loved ones, on top of losing job or trying to find a way to get to work without any adequate childcare. This pandemic has disproportionately impacted women. And we've seen it also in the fact that women are now at the lowest job participation rate since decades. And that is so wrong. Des pertes d'emploi, c'était frappé fort.
Loss of jobs has struck women very hard. It was a disproportionate attack on women, and I want to remedy that. And also, we saw a wave of violence against women. In 8 weeks, 8 women were killed at home in Quebec. It's a pandemic within a pandemic.
We know that racialized people have been hard hit by this pandemic. Many of the frontline workers, whether it's in transportation or in factories, logistics, and warehouses, there are people that are racialized, personal support workers, and they have been disproportionately impacted by this pandemic. They're the ones that are getting sick because they can't afford to stay home. They have to go to work. And we know that young people have been hard hit by this pandemic. A lot of the jobs young people worked are no longer there. The entry-level jobs, the jobs that they would start off at, are just not there. On top of having to deal with the crushing student debt that they're dealing with and the record high housing prices, this has been very tough on young people, and they've mentioned particularly impacts on their mental health. And we know that this pandemic has impacted seniors, particularly those in long-term care homes, particularly for-profit long-term care homes. These seniors, amongst the most vulnerable, have borne the brunt of this pandemic with their lives, and that is a national shame.
The successive cuts from liberals and conservatives in healthcare transfers have contributed to the problem that our seniors are facing in long-term care. Our seniors, in particular, in for-profit long-term care, who paid the price with their lives. We had to send the Canadian forces to protect our seniors. This is a national shame. We have to reestablish this situation. We have to eliminate profit in long-term care and CHSLD once and for all. Nobody should be making profits on the backs of our seniors.
New Democrats knew right when this pandemic hit that people were going to be hard hit and that they would need supports. And what we saw throughout this pandemic was that Justin Trudeau wanted to give the least support possible. But New Democrats fought for the maximum help for people every step of the way. Par exemple, avec la subvention salariale.
With the wage subsidies, Justin Trudeau wanted to only cover 10% of workers' salaries. With 10%, that's nothing. It's a symbolic gesture. But we fought, and we won, to increase the wage subsidy up to 75%, which means we covered 75% of the wage of a worker, and we saved millions of jobs. We're the ones who did it. We also saw it with the CERB. Justin Trudeau started with $1,000, but $1,000 is not enough to cover rent. We doubled the CERB to make sure that people could make ends meet to pay rent and their bills and be able to live.
In addition, we know that young people, instead of helping young people, the Liberal government was more interested, Justin Trudeau was more interested in helping his friends and we than actually getting help to people in need.
Students were completely overlooked by the Liberal government, specifically in terms of direct aid, financial direct aid. We, the New Democrats that fought for students, and we delivered direct aid to students. We're the ones who did that. And again, with a program for paid sick leave. It's an essential tool to protect workers. Workers should never have to choose between going to work or staying home with no pay. We're the ones who started a program for paid sick leave, and we know that we have to work more.
One of the most important tools in this pandemic, which is paid sick leave. We were the first to bring it forward. We fought to make it happen, but we know it needs to be better. It's still not good enough. We need to make sure that it's not only improved, but we make it permanent. So never again in this country will any worker have to worry about going into work sick or staying at home not knowing if they're going to be able to pay the bills because they have no pay. You know what we've seen in this pandemic is that the Liberals like to take credit, but New Democrats like to get results. We fight to get results. And we need to continue that fight because the situation now is getting very urgent. We know that across this country, the third wave is hitting hard with the variant spreading, people ending up in ICU. And it's not about blame. And we're seeing Justin Trudeau try to blame Conservative premiers and Conservative premiers try to blame Justin Trudeau. Leadership is not looking for excuses, it's looking for solutions. And what we need right now is a plan with all hands on deck to get every single person in our country vaccinated, particularly essential workers. They need to get vaccinated, and we need a paid sick leave that actually works for everyone now. Lives depend on it. One of the things we noticed throughout this pandemic very clearly is that the Liberals have shown again and again how they're in it for the ultra-rich and they're not in it for you or your family. And I want to give you a couple examples. The Liberals didn't hesitate to forgive billions of dollars of corporate debt. New Democrats believe we need to be forgiving student debt. Liberals profited off the backs of students by charging interest on federal student debt to the tune of billions of dollars. New Democrats believe we need to remove interest entirely and forever, permanently off of student debt. We see again and again when Liberals make decisions, they benefit the ultra-rich and you end up paying the price. And that is wrong. With pharmacare, The Liberals, they passed a motion recently, again, in their convention. They've been promising this for 24 years, decades of promises, and they continue to break it. And most recently, we gave them a chance. We put forward a bill to bring in universal pharmacare for all, and they voted against it. The only ones that benefit from the Liberal government voting against pharmacare is Big Pharma. It certainly doesn't help working families. So again, they chose Big Pharma over people. Personne ne doit être forcé de choisir
No one should be forced to choose between paying for their drugs, medication, or their groceries. The Liberals have chosen to protect the interests of the Big Pharma instead of keeping their promise of setting up universal pharmacare. We, the New Democrats, we are fighting for you and your health.
Climate change. The climate crisis is a crisis that has not gone away. We know that it's threatening everything we value. But what's the Liberal track record? What has Justin Trudeau done on climate crisis? He bought a pipeline. He gives millions of dollars away to the oil and gas sectors with fossil fuel subsidies. And he continues to let the biggest polluters off the hook. While Conservatives don't believe that the climate crisis is real, the Liberals don't act like it's real. And really, what's the difference? We need immediate action now to actually protect our environment. Les gens au Québec et
The
partout
people
au
of
Canada
Quebec and across the country of Canada want a federal government that fights the climate crisis, as though they really want to win this fight. The Liberals have bought a pipeline and continue to subsidize big oil. They prefer to put forward the interests of big companies instead of attacking the climate crisis. The Conservatives are saying that there is no climate crisis. We, the New Democrats, are working for a sustainable and fair restart. We want to fight the climate crisis with the will to do it.
And now, I know it's hard to imagine while we're in the third wave, but we are getting vaccinations, and we know that we will get past this pandemic. And we need to start looking towards a recovery. And in this recovery, a question that keeps on arriving is that who will pay the cost of this pandemic and who will pay the cost of the recovery? We know people are worried about this question, and I want to answer this clearly. It should not be you or your families, workers, small businesses that had to shut down, workers that lost their jobs. It shouldn't be you that has to pay the cost of this recovery. Who should it be then? We say very clearly, it should be those who profited off the pandemic, the ultra wealthy, the ultra rich, large corporations that made record profits that don't pay taxes in Canada, but make profits off of Canadians. They should be the ones. I've heard it said that in this pandemic, we're all in the same boat. I disagree. We're not actually in the same boat. We're certainly in the same storm, but some of us are in leaky lifeboats, while others are in luxury yachts. In this storm, the Liberals continue to side with those in luxury yachts. La plupart des gens
Most people throughout Canada are in trouble, but the richest are getting richer and richer. Big business like Amazon and web giants made record profits because of the pandemic. Justin Trudeau let the richest avoid paying their fair share of taxes by hiding billions of dollars elsewhere each year. And we, the New Democrats, will want the richest to pay. Those who profited from the pandemic, they should pay their fair share so we can help those who really need help. But when we talk about making the ultra-rich pay their fair share, the Liberals and the Conservatives don't want to hear about it.
And it's not surprising, because when we look at the Liberals' approach, they wanted to make it seem like they cared. They wanted to make it look like they were doing something for you and your families. But when it came down to their choices, they didn't choose you or your family. Let's make that really clear. What were their choices? When it came to medication coverage, who did they choose? Was it people? No, they chose big pharma. When it came to long-term care and protecting our seniors, who did the Liberals choose? Did they choose protecting our seniors and caring for the most vulnerable? No, they chose to protect the big profits of for-profit long-term care homes. What about climate change? Well, clearly, again and again, instead of choosing to protect our planet, the Liberals chose to protect big polluters. What about one of the most fundamental questions of justice in our country, the fact that Indigenous people still don't have access to clean drinking water? What was the Liberal government's choice when it came to cleaning water for Indigenous people? They chose not to do it. What about making the ultra-rich pay their fair share? The Liberals, again, chose to side with those at the very top, the ultra-wealthy, and didn't pursue making them pay their fair share. But it shouldn't be a surprise. This is who the Liberals really are. Even when New Democrats gave them an opportunity to do the right thing, at every occasion, the Liberals chose to side with the ultra-wealthy. They've made it very clear. They are simply not in it for you. But we are, and we will continue to be. Now, what about the Conservatives? We've heard them say that they are friends to workers, that they are the friends of workers. Well, I say very clearly, the Conservatives are no friends to workers when they deny them paid sick leave. They're no friends to workers when they deny pharmacare. They're no friends to workers when they protect profits in long-term care. And they are certainly no friend to workers when they make it harder to join a union. These Conservatives are no different from the previous ones. They believe in cutting the services that people need and making it harder for everyday people. Nous avons vu.
We have seen people who have trouble getting ends meet while the rich get richer. We have seen small businesses closing down while Amazons and Facebooks of this world are making record profit. This has to change. It has to change now. But it's not Justin Trudeau's Liberals who will change that, nor the Conservatives, who were never on the side of workers, while the Liberals and Conservatives put their friends and the ultra-rich first. We are ready to work for you.
Because we can do better. We've shown what we can accomplish when you elect New Democrats, how we can fight for people and deliver the help that people need, how we can improve the conditions of people. But imagine what we could do if we had more New Democrats elected. Imagine what we could do if we formed a new democratic government. Imagine all the things that we can do. We can take better care of each other with better health care, including universal pharmacare for all and getting profits out of long-term care. We can uplift young people by tackling student debt. We can have true reconciliation with Indigenous people, starting with making sure that every Indigenous community in this country has clean drinking water as a starting point and building on that. We can have a more equal Canada by tackling hate, racism, and discrimination in all its forms. We can take on the climate crisis by investing in a sustainable recovery that creates good jobs, that helps reduce our emissions. We can do all of this, but only if we have a government with the courage to do it. The courage to stand up to powerful corporations and the ultra-rich, to make them pay their fair share. New Democrats have that courage. We have that courage. Canadians are better off with more New Democrats elected. And I need your help to elect more New Democrats in this election so we can make those changes to lift people up. So I need you to get out and volunteer. I need you to make phone calls, to donate, to help people to vote. Talk to your friends and your family. Let them know all that New Democrats achieved to make people's lives better and how it would help them to have more of us. Mes amis, j'ai besoin de votre aide.
I need your help.
Devenez bénévole.
Become
Faites des
volunteers.
Faites
Make some
un don.
calls.
Parlez
Make a
à vos
donation.
amis,
Talk
à
to your
votre
friends
famille,
and
à
your
vos voisins.
family,
Expliquez-leur
your neighbors.
ce que
Explain to them
NPD a fait
what the NDP has
durant
done
cette pandémie.
during
Et
this
dites-leur
pandemic and
qu'on
tell
n'a
them
pas fini notre travail.
we're not done.
Les gens doivent savoir
People need to
qu'ils ne
know
peuvent pas compter sur les
that they
libéraux
can't count
pour
on the
faire la
liberals
bonne chose.
to do the right
Et
thing.
c'est
And
seulement avec une équipe
it's
forte du
only
NPD qu'ils seront bien
with
servis.
the voice of the
Les
NDP
néo-démocrates
that they will be
se
well
battent
served.
pour vous.
The NDP
Les
fights for
Democrats
you.
are fighting for you. We've always fought for you, and we always will. Merci. Thank you so much.